I remember the first time I thought, I want to be a chief. I was 7 years old. My dad took my brother and me to a parade. I remember the colors and the balloons, but what I remember most were two gentlemen in uniforms at the end of the parade. Everybody stood and applauded when they went by. It was obvious that they were very important people. I looked at my dad and he said, "That's the police chief and that's the fire chief." He also told me chiefs are in charge of helping others. I decided I wanted to be a chief. Years later, I was an undergrad, business school, and I heard the term again. This time it was chief financial officer and chief executive officer. I learned that these were very important people because they had power. I decided after I graduated, I want to be a chief. Today, if you're in business and you want to be a chief, it's a lot easier. It seems that every department, no matter where you go, is run by a chief. And by the way, it's not only business. You will hear the term chief academic officer, chief medical officer, chief diplomat. I read this one the other day, chief rabbi. The fact of the matter is we have a chief explosion going on of titles, okay? And the real question is, why is the term chief trending? I think it's just another signal of what's going on. We have information in everyone's hands. We have all our communication devices, right? And organizations are trying to find a way, how do I engage everyone? So they throw the chief title around, right? Some organizations, they're all chiefs. I think this is a really good thing, but it does lead to a question. The question it leads to is, what does it mean to be a real chief? Now, I spend lots of time with chiefs, some with titles, some without titles. I've written on being chief. Heck, I run a company called Being Chief. I can tell you that there are an awful lot of strong feelings about the term chief, and there's an awful lot of strong feelings about the power that's associated with chiefs. People are focused on this. I know I am. I'm very focused on the definition of the word chief. And I think it's something that we need to think about. When I started my career as a bottom of the rung on the ladder sales trainee, I had views about chiefs. I thought chiefs are special. I thought chiefs are chosen. And I thought chiefs have titles. Now, at the bottom of the rung in business, and you're looking up, there's lots of rungs to go up. And moving up in business is pretty simple. You need to take care of customers, and you need to make your numbers. That's it. You want to move up in business? That's the formula, right? Now, as you grow up, you move up in business, you have to teach other people how to do that with you, right? I was very fortunate that over an extended period of time, good luck, hard work, I was able to move up the ladder. And was already mentioned, at about the 20-year mark, I was named president of AT&T's Global Services. Okay. But shortly after I got the title, I got a phone call. I was told, you're about to take a plane ride. 2 days later, I'm in the AT&T corporate jet, going to the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am with the chairman, chief executive officer of AT&T. Okay? Now, I had seen his picture before on the cover of Forbes and Fortune. I'd spent some time with him before, but never this close. Never this close. And to be honest, I mean, this is a business icon, a Fortune 10 CEO. I was a little intimidated. Just a little bit, for a little period. So we get on the jet, I board the jet, we have a nice dinner, and just after the dinner was served, I kind of lean back and I'm loosening my tie, and I realize that he's over here kind of doing the same thing. And I stop and I kind of check him out. And I realize he's wearing the same blue suit that I am. He's wearing the same red tie that I am. He's wearing the same white shirt. Okay, his cufflinks are more expensive. Big deal. But then I notice something important. He's got the same stack of paper next to him that I have next to me. And I look at him and I notice he looks tired as I feel. And at that moment, the light went on, and I knew the truth. He wasn't all that different, wasn't all that special. And that led to a bunch of other thoughts. I thought, okay, for 20 years, you've been waiting for somebody else to tell you, looking over, is it time for me to get the next rung? For 20 years, and I thought, okay. But I was waiting always for somebody else to tell me, is it time for that next? I didn't want to wait anymore. And I thought about this whole title thing, right? And I thought to myself, I had worked with wonderful people for 20 years who had done great jobs. They had taken charge, they had helped others, remember the definition, right? They'd done a wonderful job, but they didn't have chief titles. So I'm now sitting next to the CEO, and I start to look at him more as a peer rather than a superior. And I decide that, guess what? These are all wrong. These are all wrong. So that leads me to a whole other discussion of kind of thinking now, and this is where I've spent the rest of my life, really, with this topic of chiefs. What is a real chief? Really? I spent lots of time on this, and I offer this for your consideration. This is what I have learned. A real chief is someone who makes a choice to connect what they do to who they are. Okay? 3 parts. Let's break it down. Okay? Real chiefs, part 1. What do real chiefs do? Real chiefs serve others. Real chiefs work hard. Real chiefs create fully. They create the future. So that's part 1. Part 2, here's the do part. Okay? Here's the B part. The B part. This is linked to values, who you are. You are your values. It comes from insight, right? In my experience, real chiefs build insight in terms of who they are by being 5 things. 5. Real chiefs are present. They're in the moment. Real chiefs are accepting. They're not in denial of what's happening. Real chiefs are grateful. Real chiefs are generous. And real chiefs can be still. Now, if you're thinking of the term mindfulness, which is also trending right now, it's got bits and pieces of this, okay? I love the mindfulness movement. But again, that's only part of it. The power comes when we connect the two. When we connect what we do to who we are, all right? So here's a question for you. Have you ever found yourself engaged in an activity where you were so focused that you lost track of time? Yeah? Yeah? You were in the zone. What would it be like if you spent far more time, a far higher percentage of your life in the zone? It'd be pretty cool, right? I spend lots of time with individuals and with companies that try to create opportunities for more and more and more people to be in the zone, right? To love what they're doing. You see all these chief titles, this is a representation of that. How do we create organizations where everybody brings their A game every day? Not because they have to, but because they want to, right? That's a great place to be. It's a great place to be. When I think about when businesses are successful, right? You see more and more businesses that are out there trending up, this term chief. But the good news is that there are plenty of chiefs who are not in business, who are not at work. You can find real chiefs anywhere. Anywhere. Sometimes you can find chiefs in places that you wouldn't expect to find them. I found one in a hospital. She was sitting in a wheelchair, waiting patiently for her appointment. The first time I saw a girl that we will call Melissa, this wonderful 6-year-old with cerebral palsy was waiting for her turn in a 100-degree heated pool where I was volunteering to help a physical therapist stretch these kids who had incredibly stiff muscles. I remember Melissa's patience waiting her turn. But when we got her in the pool, she had a smile that lit up the entire place. Gets me goosebumps to this day. Okay? What I remember when we got in the pool, she was as focused on the task at hand as anybody had ever seen. She started looking like this. She was rigid, and we worked for months to connect her arms and fully extend them. She had one dream. She wanted to take a little foam basketball, be able to grip it, and put it in a net and score 2 points. It took us 6 months for her to recognize her goal, okay? When she did it, we celebrated. You could only imagine. Now, she was a real chief. She was present. She was grateful. She was generous. She was accepting of her situation. Yet she was disciplined. She was hardworking. She was creating her future. She was an inspiration. Did she serve others? I'll tell you what, she served me. She taught me so much, right? And she reminded me, you know, that we can never assume that those who are less fortunate are less courageous, or less worthy, or less able to be a real chief. She had a power, an incredible power, that frankly we all have. This is the last assumption that I want to put out there that I have a problem with, right? We have lots of challenges that we have to face, economically, politically, socially, environmentally. And a lot of people look at people with titles and say, they'll solve it. I think we all have an opportunity to stand up to do our part. And I think we have to look at it, this as a assumption that we can no longer stand, right? Look inside yourself. What's going on out there that you think you can do your part on? Now, I'm a business guy. I focus on numbers, right? Increasingly, for the right reasons, I focus with organizations on what should we be doing for profits, what should we be doing for people, and what should we be doing for the planet? The triple bottom line. We spend lots of time on that, okay? But it's about numbers. I normally focus on numbers. Here's a set of numbers I've been focused on recently. These are numbers I don't want to go up. There are 17 million kids in our country who go to bed every night hungry. That's the size of the populations of Massachusetts and Virginia combined. 41% of the high school students in our top 50 cities will not graduate. 33% of children born today will contract diabetes sometime in their life. These numbers bother me. And I have to figure out what I can do to stand up and do something about it. So I spend lots of time with kids. And the wonderful thing about spending time with kids is they teach. I think I'm there to teach, and they teach me. I learn. And it's funny because the lessons that I learn from the kids are the same lessons I learn when I spend time with C-suite executives, and I do some of that too. Time and time again, I come back to the same lesson, that being a real chief is a choice. That's the key takeaway. So, my question to all of you, do you have an opportunity to serve others, to work hard, to create fully, totally consistent with your values and who you are, your insight? The world is changing. Power is shifting. You have a wonderful opportunity to step up. So here's my request. The next time you see the term chief, or you hear the term chief, use it as a personal wake-up call to remind yourself of what does a real chief do. And think about it. Think hard about your chance to make the choice. Thank you very much.